May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So today, particularly, we're working with the fourth immeasurable, equanimity. So I just want to call your attention to that. And now we'll go to Khenchen's teaching on Tonglen that we'll just reread. This is from his long poem, Samsara and Nirvana, Two Sides of the Same Hand. With a positive attitude of loving kindness and compassion, I give to the downtrodden sentient beings of the six realms all my happiness and roots of virtue without reservation. With a natural manner of brave heart mind, I take into my mind stream every one of the qualities of abandonment and realization of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the three times. In samsara, from beginningless time through today, the sole cause bringing suffering is always my own self-fixation, fundamental non-knowing. I give this away right now without a second thought. Knowing that all sentient beings of the three realms have been my mother, I recall their kindness, wish to repay their kindness, and connect to them with love. I generate compassion for them, then the mindset to attain enlightenment for their sake. I take all these mind trainings into the center of my heart without clinging or attachment. I give my entire bounty of resources and roots of virtue to these kind mothers, and in an authentic manner, like an illusion, like a mirage, I take on all their karma, afflictions, and suffering. This is also something very important for today. In an authentic manner, like an illusion, like a mirage. Negative conditions are spiritual teachers. Spirits and demons are emanations of conquerors. Sickness is a broom, sweeping away defilements and obscurations. All sufferings are Dharmata's way. So we are working with this line today. Sickness is a broom, sweeping away defilements and obscurations. All sufferings are Dharmata's waves. The next prayer I'm going to put into the chat so that you can download it. This is called Wisdom and Courage, using wisdom and courage. And it's a very old Tonglen prayer designed for a crisis of illness, or actually, you could say it's designed for just about any crisis that we might encounter. But if you consider it, let's say we're in a crisis, particularly an unexpected illness, four things can happen. We can get the full-on sickness that we fear. We can be totally healed of that sickness. We can die, or we can have a long life. So those are the four possible outcomes. And this prayer is quite extraordinary because it is a teaching on how to approach it with an attitude of Tonglen and without hope and fear. It's really focusing on how to maintain equanimity with whatever we face in life. So I want to put in at the very beginning a caveat that there are no shoulds. We all take in the Dharma and take in the different kinds of crises that we face at our own rate of speed. And so in our own way, we are learning. And it's as though we're different soups. Our minds are different soups on different burners with different temperatures underneath. So we're taking it in, we're thinking about it. And when we are ready and able, we're putting the teachings into practice, that which we can understand and that which we can do with a sense of exploration. So I want to take this teaching right out of, I should be able to do this and I'm a failure if I can't do this. So we know that in samsara, we are the nature to become ill. We are of the nature to die. That is samsara. That is the suffering of samsara. We are of the nature to become old. So there's no sense of blame attached when these different things happen. We know that there are karmic seeds from limitless lifetimes, and due to our karma, we are in samsara, and with samsara comes sickness, old age, and death. That's just the way it is. And although we don't like to admit it, we are a part of our culture. So our culture tends to blame people for illness. Our culture tends to diminish people who are helpless and people who are unable in some way to contribute. You know, it might have started with the pioneers. Native American teachings have a whole different approach to illness, but certainly that's a part of some subconscious mentality that many of us have taken in, having grown up in this culture. So what we're going to look at is what happens when we approach everything that arises in our life with a new purpose, not winning, not success, but growing our hearts in love and compassion. Not failure or winning, growing our hearts in love and compassion. So knowing that this is the nature of samsara, we can let go of anger and the why me quality that comes with illness. Even the subtle ways we might be blaming ourselves. Well, maybe it had to do with what I ate or what I breathed, where I worked, all those different things. And start to, with the teachings we've been working throughout this time, notice what kind of thoughts put us in a self-referencing bubble and what kind of thoughts have a response of our heart to learning and growing, and refocus on how wonderful illness is occurring. That is a stop sign in life, and it allows us to reevaluate how we're spending our time and refocus on the purpose of growing in loving kindness and compassion. So then we can see, oh, very naturally, the human mind goes right into hope and fear. I hope I get better. I'm afraid I won't get better. And we vacillate between hope and fear. So if you look at the first line of this prayer, it's in the chat box. I rely on you, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, until I achieve enlightenment. Please grant me enough wisdom and courage to be free from delusion. So we start with refuge, taking refuge in the Dharma, in the teachings, and in the realization of the great heart mind. And then we go, if I'm supposed to get sick, let me get sick and I'll be happy. That's the key word. Let me get sick and I'll be happy. May this sickness purify my negative karma and the sickness of all sentient beings. So this is a key to working with opening our heart minds when we get sick to the suffering that is a part of samsara, and all of the beings who are just like us at this moment, working with illness and working with suffering. So we can notice the habits of mind that arise. It's not only hope and fear, it's how we have accumulated a habit of wanting to be away from the present moment, not wanting to face this. And we all have different ways of not facing something that's unwanted. We can push it away with anger. We can push it away with entertainment. We can push it away with addictions. We can push it away with overwork. So all of a sudden we have to stop so we can look at, oh, these are all my habits. These are all the things that draw me away from the present moment. Can I sit instead of in hope and fear, but can I sit with a presence of equanimity? I'm happy. May this purify my karma. So there were karmic seeds that brought into this moment of our life an illness, and it's considered actually a tremendous blessing to have karmic seeds arise when we have a community, when we have a teacher, and when we have the teachings. So we can start to think about, I'm actually prepared for this. I know that this may be difficult, but this is going to be an incredible opportunity to stay in the present moment and an incredible opportunity to work with maintaining a presence of loving kindness to everyone I meet on this journey, all the doctors and nurses, to live with a full appreciation of kindness. And it's also an opportunity to go deeply into Tonglen. So a lot of times people are a little bit frightened of Tonglen when we're taking on the suffering of others, not understanding that in this moment of our training, it's like a mirage. So if we're ill, let's say we get a cancer diagnosis and we're saying, in this moment, just like me, many beings have cancer. May I breathe in the suffering of all these sentient beings. May I go through this experience taking on cancer so that all beings are free from cancer. This is a way of maintaining the present moment and opening in compassion, and the definition of compassion, suffering with. So we see the suffering of everyone, let's say in the waiting room with us, everyone receiving chemotherapy with us. And we're, in essence, mentally teaching ourselves, I take on all of this mental and physical confusion and delusion. It doesn't mean we're taking on more than we actually have. It means we're taking on and looking at what's present in our minds and being open, not avoiding, being welcoming, not blind to it, and feeling it for what it is. So we know that in meditation, when we're working with thoughts, we know that they are impermanent, so we can look at the impermanence of it. We can look at mindfulness of body when we're feeling physical pain. And we're saying, may I work with this experience in such a way that I move through with greater love and compassion. And in doing so, all the sentient beings are included in my aspiration to be free of this. So Khenchen's emphasis, it's like a mirage and like an illusion, is really our way of working with a combination of fear and compassion, a combination of working with our own fear, and as we've been speaking all along, keeping our eyes open instead of blind to the suffering of others, and in an aspirational way, holding the aspiration may I release the suffering of all sentient beings. So sometimes we think, that we're actually volunteering to increase our own pain. It's more at each level of development, we have the capacity to suffer with greater and greater numbers of people. So, for instance, I worked with a wonderful, wonderful Sangha member years ago named Louise Diamond. And she went to work in Burundi, and actually her work was going to war zones and doing peace diplomacy. So she really went into the hotspots of the world. And she asked His Holiness Gyaltshen Rinpoche once about doing Tonglen, and he said, no, don't do Tonglen when you're in a war zone. You might become overwhelmed. So he could see that she was doing wonderful work. She was growing in her bodhisattva aspiration, but if in a war zone at her state of development, she was to fully open her heart, she would be overwhelmed, either, a debilitating depression. He didn't say why, he just acknowledged her capacity at that moment. So over the years, she grew and grew and grew in her wisdom. And late in life, when she was working on her third cancer for cancer survivors, the third one is probably going to be the difficult one. But she was in chemotherapy. And what she decided to do with, it's always a number of rounds. I think she had 6 rounds of chemotherapy, is to enter in a deep state of compassion or suffering with, and see the chemotherapy, each round of chemotherapy working with the suffering of one of the hot spots that she visited over her lifetime working in peace diplomacy. So she took on one at a time different war zones, seeing her illness being connected with the planet and connected with an area of great horrendous violence and confusion, and saw the chemotherapy as working with both that area and her body at the same time. And being witness to her lifetime of growth and seeing the wise guidance not to go too quickly into Tonglen, and then the natural opening when she was ready to go further in her final illness, was just really a gorgeous teaching about how over time we're, as they say in the definition of the word Buddha, continuously expanding. So we're trusting in that continual expansion and looking with equanimity at what arises. So if we go through more of this prayer, if I'm supposed to be healed, let all my sickness and confusion be healed, reminding us that healing is the mind of bodhicitta, not necessarily a physical healing, but connecting. There may be a physical healing, there may not be a physical healing, but it's my confusion that needs to be healed. If I'm supposed to die, let me die and I'll be happy. Let all delusion die. And if my life is to be cut short, let it be cut short. Oh, there's one line missing. And if I'm to have a long life, may that life, all right, I'm going back to the prayer. If I'm supposed to be healed, let all my sickness and confusion be healed and I'll be happy. May all sentient beings be healed and filled with happiness. If I'm supposed to die, let me die and I'll be happy. May all delusion and causes of suffering of beings die. If my life is to be cut short, let it be cut short. May I and others be free from attachment and aversion. And I believe there's one more line. If I'm to have a long life, may my life be a life of service. So with equanimity, all the scenarios are taken care of. I'll be sick, I'm happy. I'll be healed, I'm happy. I may die, I'll be happy. My life may be cut short, I'll be happy. I may have a long life and I'll be happy. Each one putting us back into the true purpose of our life, having a growing understanding of a wise heart of loving compassion and kindness. Someone has asked me to put a link or source from that poem in the chat box, and it's something that's passed around. I've seen it in, I think Wisdom Books did the 7 Trainings of the Mind, or one of their very thick books had a long explanation of Tonglen, and I've seen it listed in that book, but it's quite an ancient prayer. I do have it on our website under resources because we pass it around a lot. So let's sit with this a minute and just really contemplate equanimity in what we're working with, our stages of different kinds of old age, our stages of minor illnesses, our stages of working with more difficult kinds of challenges. And just contemplate our approach. Replacing panic with equanimity. And returning. So I want to close the Facebook Live before we go into discussion. So just a brief dedication. But before we open it to discussion, I just want to say a little more. In essence, this quality of opening and opening to the suffering of others and the aspirational thought of the heartbreak of seeing the suffering of samsara and the willingness to receive that suffering so that others don't. It's not as though it's more than a mirage. It's more that when your mind is able to hold that thought, your mind is so much bigger. Your heart is so much bigger. And that actually has an effect. So we wonder, is this all imaginary, or does it have an effect? Your presence with a bigger heart mind touches everyone you interact with in a way that you don't necessarily perceive or understand. So many years ago, my mother was in a nursing home and she had dementia. And Gyaltshen Rinpoche happened to visit that town. So I had a friend help me, and we took her in a wheelchair over to visit Gyaltshen Rinpoche. And on the surface, we had a pretty innocuous conversation with Gyaltshen Rinpoche and my mother. My mother wasn't a Buddhist. She was, a polite, formally dignified before she had dementia, elderly woman. The presence of his love was so profound that when she was speaking with him, she didn't have dementia. She had a normal conversation that she might have had years ago, and that had an effect for 3 days. And so the force of loving kindness and his compassion in his presence had a physical effect on her. I can't explain it, but I could witness it. So bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. When I had cancer and when I was practicing during that period, my friends told me I was nicer to be around. So hopefully, hopefully it had a more continuous effect afterwards. But the whole sense of stopping and refocusing our lives so that it becomes about love instead of what we thought it might have been about. Even our close relations can see the difference and experience the difference. So I know, Donna, that you've had a recent experience with illness, and I'm wondering, you shared a little bit in our Tuesday group. I wonder if you'll talk about what it was like to practice through your recent surgery in any way that you're comfortable. Okay.
First of all, I'm a terrible patient because I'm really highly sensitive to pain. And so I'm always like kind of freaked out, but I just found it very helpful to be focusing on everybody else in this space and like what they're going through and the other people who are waiting for their surgery. And just, I couldn't see them, but I could hear them in different rooms. So just kind of doing Tonglen and just including them in Tonglen and just thinking whatever they're going through, I hope this goes well. And the same with the nurses, just thinking about, well, some of them actually were sharing like things that were happening with them. Like my daughter just moved and you could tell that she didn't, she was upset about it. So I would just like think about and ask her questions about it and why she moves. So just like focusing not on myself was tremendously helpful. And yeah, I was able to sustain that through pretty much the whole process, which was like 6 hours from start to finish. And it just made it so it wasn't a very heavy event, you could say. So I found the practice very helpful.
Other thoughts or reflections or ways that you've worked with illness and implemented some of the practices into your experience of illness? Well, have you ever had the thought that we were working with today of working with Tonglen like a mirage instead of, let's say, being afraid perhaps of Tonglen, you know, working with, oh, if I breathe in the suffering of other people, it might hurt me more and more than I'm able to do, and how you've worked with that over time, or how you might work with it now.